All right, it's January now. And one of the top questions I get asked all the time, who do you think is going to win? Who's going to win 25? Who's going to win this weight? Who's more likely to win, this guy or this guy? And so I'm thinking, hey, man, it's January. We've had 2 months of wrestling at this point. Who are the picks? Who do I think is going to win these weight classes? So I decided I'm going to name my 10 NCAA champions. I'm going to give you the confidence in which I'm feeling these guys are going to win. Okay, so starting from least confident to the most confident. I'm going to start at number 10. Least confident is not going to be a surprise to you. It's going to be a 125-pounder. Now, in the beginning of the year, I was like, hey, man, I said it on FRL, I'm picking Jacob Kamacho, X, Y, and Z. He's beaten some really good guys over the years. He's back. He's healthy. He could do it. And I'm not fully ruling him out at this point as an NCAA champion, but he's not going to be my pick today. He had a really rough collegiate duels. Even though he's beaten Anthony Noto, he took some losses to some unranked guys and some guys that are going to be fringe qualifiers or podium guys. So when you're taking a loss like that, it's probably not likely you're going to be an NCAA champion. But this year at 125, all bets are off. So my pick this year, right now, 125, on this is January 5th when I'm shooting this, I picked Matt Ramos. And you could say there's not a guy in America you can't poke a lot of holes in and say, well, he's not going to win because X, Y, and Z. And Matt's one of those guys for sure. But what I like and what's kind of fueling this pick of Matt is, one, I love that he's just been out there competing. He hasn't missed a match. He's been out there. He wrestled at Vegas. He wrestled in the All-Star. He wrestled at Journeyman. He's been wrestling in the duels for Purdue. And yeah, he's taken some losses along the way. But don't forget, he also has a win over the current number one, Anthony Noto. He beat him at the All-Star Classic. That's not a match that counts for the official record, but let's be honest, it counts in terms of your perception of where those two are at. And right now, I think Ramos is the better guy. And that combined with the fact that we've seen him go to NCAAs and have a standout performance, right? We've seen this guy make an NCAA finals run. That's something that no one else in this field has been able to accomplish yet. So the fact that he hasn't looked so bad, he's not so off here like you can't envision him winning, combined with the fact that, he seems healthy and that we've seen him go on deep runs before. That's why he's my pick at 125 right now. Ask me again in an hour. Ask me again after this weekend. My opinion might have changed. Right now, Matt Ramos, 125 champion. Number 9, ninth most likely NCAA champion. This is 149 pounds. I went back and forth on this one, and then you sometimes just gotta go with your heart, your gut, your bias even. I'll admit I'm a biased Virginia Tech fan. I'm going with Caleb Henson. I've loved what I've seen from him this year. Ultra aggressive, great hand fighter, good from everywhere. A lot of leg attacks, solid defense. He lost to Ridge Lovett. Ridge Lovett's currently number 1 in America, and he should be a lot of people's pick, and he should be a lot of people's pick for good reason. Go back and watch their Vegas match. It was right there to be won for Caleb Henson. He just didn't quite do it. I think come NCAAs, it's a match that can be won. Now, ask me a month and a half ago, I may be saying Shane Van Ness's name right now, but unfortunately, the Penn State 49-pounder is out for the year. He's not going to be a factor for this year's NCAA championship. And I really feel pretty strongly right now it's a 2-horse race between Henson and Lovett. Could be famous last words here as, it's NCAA wrestling. Anything can happen. Anything does happen. And also we have the emergence or the reintroduction of Austin Gomez into NCAA wrestling where, he had been gone. He's retired twice now from collegiate wrestling, only to return. And now he's returned, wrestled for the University of Michigan last night against South Dakota State. He took out a tough Alec Martin, but we're going to need to see him in a couple more tests to see, do we get that old Austin Gomez back, the guy that won Big Tens, that beat Ridge Lovett in the past. If that guy's back, he could win NCAAs. But as of right now, I'm not sure. So I'm going with Henson, number 9. Not a ton of confidence here, but he's my pick. Number 8, this was a tough one. And this part of the, from 8 through 4, you can mix this up and I could be convinced and change up the order. But right now, my number 8 most likely NCAA champion is Parker Keckheisen at UNI. Now, the reason I think he's going to win, one, I think he already has a win over the second best guy at the weight, Bernie Truax, and that's a good enough reason right there. And but what gives me caution or pause or whatever is it's Bernie Truax. He's beaten him before. He's at Penn State, right? There's adjustments that can be made there. he took him down. Bernie took down Parker early in that match, and it took a lot of effort from Parker late to end up running down Bernie. Now, Bernie can get a little bit better, but I think the problems that Parker presents, just a beast, a powerful hand fighter, someone that can pressure forward, I think those problems are still going to be there for Bernie, and that's why I still think Parker is going to get his hand raised in March. Not my most confident pick, obviously, but I think what we've seen from Parker Kekheisen, you got to stick with him at this point. So he's my pick, 8th most likely NCAA champion. Headed on to number 7, I'm going with Levi Haynes, and you know that I am and was really, really high on Meyer Shapiro at this weight class. And I thought he was going to come in and contend for a title. And that could still happen. That's not an impossibility. But seeing what I saw at Vegas and that performance shows there's a gap there. And this weight class is just savage. It's brutal. It's deep. It goes 10, 12 guys deep. Really, really tough. And so you kind of fall back on a safe pick and maybe the most likely pick and who should have been the pick all along, Levi Haynes. This is a guy who, as a true freshman last year, lost 2 times. He lost to Vinny Zerban, which has proven to be an outlier for Levi. And then he lost in the NCAA finals to Austin O'Connor, who's gone. So he's the highest returning place winner from a year ago. He hasn't lost yet this year. What also is sort of clouding my judgment a little with 157 is we've seen very little of Levi Haynes this year. He didn't wrestle in the All-Star. He hasn't wrestled any highly ranked guys. I don't know if he's faced anyone in the top 15 yet. So we don't really have anything to really measure or gauge to see where Levi's at from last year. But that said, I think he's still probably the guy. Peyton Robb's in the mix. Jared Franik's in the mix. There's a lot of really good guys at this weight class. Ja'Cory Teemer's back from injury this year. He could throw a wrench in the works, no doubt about it. But right now, I'm going with Levi Haynes. I think it's a safe pick. And track record for Penn State, it's undeniable at this point. Number 6, Keegan ONeill. Now, he could be higher. He could be lower. I think 6 is just about right because, one, what we've seen from Keegan, he looks as good as ever. We saw him at U23s and it was like, whoa. It stood out that Keegan is, continuing to improve. And he's been utterly dominant. He's the number 2 pound-for-pound wrestler in the country. And I think that's all deserved. So why isn't he higher? Simple. David Carr's there. And David Carr is 2-1 against Keegan ONeill. And yes, Keegan got the last one. And yes, you could maybe even say, all right, maybe Keegan solved the puzzle. I don't think wrestling's that simple. I don't think that math can be applied there. So I think David Carr still looms. I still think the matchup problems that he's presented to Keegan in the past are still going to be there. And for that reason, I can't put Keegan much higher than this because out of respect to him. Now, is there anyone else at 165 that could challenge Keegan? I don't think so. I don't think anyone outside of Carr. Mitchell Messenbrink is someone that gets thrown out there, but we can't even really entertain that until we see him against some tougher guys. Now, that time is coming for Levi and for Mitchell and the Penn State guys as they hit the Big Ten season. But until then, it's more of a wait and see with Mitchell Messenbrink. And Isaac Olenek from Oklahoma State has really improved a lot, but I don't see anyone else making the final here. Now, a counter to the counter is that David Carr lost to Julian Ramirez this year. So he's not looking quite as sharp as he did a year ago in the regular season. But when it matters most, when they're duels, whether it's Big 12s, NCAAs, I think we're going to see a better version of David Carr. And I think it's one that can contend with Keegan ONeill. But Keegan ONeill still going to be my pick at 165. Next up, world champion, the reigning NCAA champion, number 5. Most confident NCAA champion pick, Vito Araujo. I could go a lot of different directions with this one because on the one hand, you've got a guy that won a senior world title, taking out one of the best pound-for-pound wrestlers in the world, Abaskhadze Magomedov, in the world finals, right? You got the guy that beat Roman Bravo Young and Dayton Fix back-to-back relatively dominantly. And, those facts are all still true. What is also still true is that Brian Crookham beat Vito Araujo this year. That happened. That was a huge shock. And, Crookham's not going anywhere. I mean, he's already, putting in his Instagram post 9 days, counting down the days till he wrestles Vito again. He wants to prove it's not a fluke. It wasn't just a random upset, that he can really challenge Vito Araujo. That said, I'm still sticking with Vito to win this weight class, even though it has Dayton Fix, who's a monster. Even though, Aaron Nagau's still there. Even though Ryan Crookham has emerged as a title contender and is number one ranked guy at 133, I'm still going with Vito, and I feel relatively confident about it. I think he's going to get it done. I think he's just a special, special wrestler, and I expect him to win 133, although it's going to be a gauntlet for him to run it again. Okay, next up, 141. Fourth most confident pick is going to be Real Woods of Iowa. Now, reason I have Real pretty high, one, look at his year last year. Undefeated going into the NCAA finals, where he loses a wild one to Andrew Alirez. Andrew Alirez not in the field this year. He's taking an Olympic red shirt. He's trying to make the Olympic team. Oh, and he could do that. That's how good Andrew Alirez is. We just saw him dominate at senior nationals, and that's who beat Real Woods. Now he's out of the mix. So not only is Andrew Alirez not in at 141, you look at the rest of the weight, and it's not as deep as like a 57 or some of these other. It doesn't have a guy like a David Carr that's challenging. It's Bo Bartlett's there. He's tough. You've got Brock Hardy, who has given Real Woods some really tough matches, but Real, one, majored him last time. Two, Brock has taken some losses this year and not look like maybe he's the same guy, right? You got Jesse Mendez. He's emerged, and you're talking about maybe he's the guy with the best chance to beat Real Woods. And then he drops one to Cole Matthews. So I think Real has established himself, and then you combine that with what he did to Lachlan McNeil in the Soldier Salute finals, and you can't feel anything but confident that Real's going to make the final, and I think he's going to win. So I feel pretty confident about it. The weight class, I think, matches up well for Real. He can wrestle from everywhere. He has a lot of ways he can win matches. He's a great hand fighter, good leg attacks, tough on top, knows how to scramble, doesn't really get ridden. That's a winning recipe, and that's a national champion recipe. So I think Real gets it done at 141. Next, most likely, number 3, Greg Kirkfleet of Penn State, the heavyweight. Now, he's already teched the number 2 guy, Wyatt Hendrickson. Now, they had a really close match at NCAAs, right? Where Wyatt actually got the opening takedown. And then Kirkfleet runs him over, steamrolls him at the All-Star Classic. I don't think that match is necessarily a representation of how close or far apart those guys are. That's how far apart they were then. Come NCAAs, provided Wyatt's fully healthy in training, I think that is a closer match. But I'm not sure he's going to be able to make up that gap. I think not only does Wyatt need to get better, he had some gaps to make up, but I also think Greg has improved since the last NCAAs. And I think when you consider that, and there's sort of a lack of other challengers for Kirkfleet. Like, if not Wyatt, who? Younger Bastida? Maybe. I don't think that's a great matchup for Younger. I think Younger is amazing. Love watching. Maybe my favorite heavyweight to watch right now, other than Hendrickson, who's just a wild ride. But I just think this weight class looks like it's going to be Greg's. So he's my pick, number 3, most confident. And then this is what prompted this video is someone asked me, hey, if you had to pick one of these guys, which one is more likely to lose, this guy or that guy? And you probably know the names that were between here, Aaron Brooks or Carter Strachey. Who do I think is the most likely to drop a match of those two? Now, being the most likely to lose that match is it's still, the percentages I think are really, really small. They're my number 2 and number 1 most confident NCAA champions. But number 2 for me is Aaron Brooks. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Even though I think Aaron Brooks is very likely the second best wrestler in the world at 86 kilograms. I think he's behind David Taylor, and I don't think he's behind anyone else. I think he could beat Yazdani. I think he could beat everyone else in America. He made Final X last year. I think he is that world class. And so I think that needs to be factored in here, right? And I want that caveat in there because I don't think that's true for Carter Strachey, right? I don't think Carter Strachey is the second best in the world, right? But I think it's all about the weight class. It's all about the contenders here. And for Brooks, you've got Trent Hidley, who, let's face it, Trent has been a difficult matchup historically for Aaron Brooks. They wrestled at NCAAs in 21 and 22, and it was close. They were close matches. And when you factor that in, and with the fact that Trent looks awesome this year. He's bigger, he's stronger. So is Aaron. Don't get me wrong, so is Aaron. But when you factor in Trent being at this weight, and then the rest of the way is just really tough. Stephen Buchanan's back in, right? Rocky Elam looks great. We've seen that Tanner Sloan's not a great matchup for Brooks. He dominated him at the All-Star. And there's also, does AJ Ferrari get into a school somewhere and somehow becomes a contender? You can't rule that out either. So I think 97 is just a much tougher weight than 174. And I think Trent has proven to be a specifically difficult matchup for Brooks. At least, though he's won both matches, it's been close. It's been close. And which brings me to number one, the most likely NCAA champion this year, in my opinion, is Carter Starachi. He's going for his fourth NCAA title, as is Aaron Brooks. And when you look at this weight, you have to say, all right, well, if Carter doesn't win, who does? Who beats him? Who knocks this guy off? Well, it doesn't look like Mekhi Lewis. You look at that All-Star match, and the gap seems to be getting wider, not closer, right? He already had a gap to make up against Carter Starachi, and it's Carter that's widening it, in fact. And he majored him at the All-Star. And then you could have talked me into Chris Foca. Maybe he's going to be a tough matchup at 174. He's given him Brooks tough matches in the past, but Foca's going up to 184, so now he's not even factored in. And number 3 is Cade DeVos, who just lost to Shane Griffith. So I think Carter Starachi, if you're looking for the most confident NCAA champion, I think it's him. But that's just my list. I'd be curious, what do you think? Who are your 10 NCAA champions? What order of confidence do you have in those guys? Put them in the comments below. I'd love to see them.